welcome to Mom Matters. I'm your host, Alyssa Dver, and in the next 10 easy-to-watch minutes, we're going to give you practical tips for more productive parenting. Tonight's topic is a really important subject that a lot of parents may not be aware of, but are going to be surprised to hear how common it is. And we're going to be talking about sensory integration dysfunction, which actually goes by a couple other names that we're going to learn about tonight too. And teaching us all this great information is Jean Esposito. She's with us tonight. She is a registered and licensed occupational therapist, and she's been practicing for over 20 years in our lovely state of Massachusetts. So we are just really happy to have you tonight, Jean. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start with, what is sensory integration dysfunction?
Okay, well, it also goes by the name sensory processing disorder.
Okay.
And I'll go through what sensory integration actually is first. It's a neurological process where the body or an individual takes sensory information in from either the environment or themselves, and then it's organized and you can work effectively in your life. Sensory processing disorder is where you have difficulty taking that information in. Either you don't perceive it the correct way, or you don't interpret what you're taking the correct way.
Okay, when you say sensory too, it could be touch,
The
oral,
five senses,
they're
all five senses. So it's visual,
Okay.
it's auditory,
Okay.
it's touch, it's movement, and it's taking information in from your body. So what we call proprioceptive information.
Okay. So when somebody has a dysfunction, when they're not processing that, can you give me an idea of what kind of reaction that child might have?
Oh, there's lots. So if you're having trouble with, say, well, just pick one, because I think it's one that a lot of parents will see. So if a child has trouble taking touch information in, they may avoid activities like finger painting, gluing, pasting, being hugged, correct.
Okay.
If they have trouble registering information from touch and they're under registering information, they may be crashing into objects, they may be bumping into things, so they're taking information in differently.
Oh, so different children could react very differently.
Correct, yes.
And depending on is it normally all the senses that are affected, or maybe one or two?
No, sometimes it's not all of them at all times. Sometimes it's just one or two. So that's why you really can't define a list of symptoms. Like somebody has the flu, they have a fever, they run down. With sensory processing disorder, it could be a variety of different things that children experience or show symptoms.
Okay. And what typically causes something like this?
That's hard to say. It's a neurological process, so it's something in the brain that it's not interpreting information the correct way.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a genetic issue or something that maybe is caused by an environmental or virus.
No, it's not a disease. I should say that it's really not a disease. It's just a neurological process, and it's not a neurological process where parents would see a decline in their child's behavior. It's typically a consistent group of behaviors that they will see.
Okay, so give me an example that a parent or a professional like yourself, how would you diagnose that a child actually has something like that versus some other more different kind of problem? I mean, like, how do you know that your kid's not just clumsy or doesn't like to be hugged, for that matter, you know?
That's a great question. And that's a great question. I'm not sure it's as easy to define, because there are some behaviors that are typical behaviors. So a child might tantrum, but they might be tantruming because they're aversive to some sensory information that they're taking in. So it's really hard to define what is it more of a typical behavior and what would be more of a sensory behavior. And really what a therapist would look at is a cluster of symptoms that a child exhibits to see whether that is truly a sensory processing disorder.
Okay. I know that I'm amazed how many people I have run into that have children with this particular disorder, and it goes as dramatic as kids who won't sleep with blankets on them, and there's all kinds of equipment and special things to make it a lot more appealing. Tags, labels in their clothing, so all kinds of issues. So what I would like to do is take a break, because when we come back I want to talk about a little bit more about how you know if your child has it, and more importantly, what do you do if you suspect your child has it, and how are you as a professional, how are things dealt with?
Right.
So we will be right back.
Every parent knows at any crowded venue, just a split-second distraction is all it takes. And without identification, your child is lost. Finally, there's a solution. Wanderwear. T-shirts and child identification tags that give parents peace of mind.
Wonder where you keep it
Welcome back to Mom Matters. We're here with Jean Esposito, a occupational therapist, talking about sensory integration dysfunction. And after our recent conversation just now, I'm kind of left with this thought of, well, how do you know your kid has it? I mean, my nephew doesn't like the color purple. I mean, is that a sensory disorder issue, or is it just that he's being, 5?
Right. Correct. And that's the big issue, is what is more of a behavior or a typical behavior and that they'll outgrow, and what is more of an issue that really needs to be looked at more in depth. And the question becomes, how much do the behaviors or symptoms that parents might see interfere with a child's daily function?
Okay.
So if they sleep with 5 comforters, so what? But if they're constantly bumping into things, if they're clumsy, if they're constantly tantruming, then that's a bigger issue, and you need to really have it looked at more in depth.
So certain things they don't want to touch may not be a big deal, but if it becomes, everything becomes an issue, or they have a hard time playing with other children because they don't want to be touched.
Correct.
Or
Or even the social piece of that, because
Right.
the noise is too loud, somebody's constantly bumping into them, that becomes a bigger issue.
Okay, so as a parent, now you're a parent, and in fact you said one of your children had some sensory issues.
Mhm.
You all of a sudden realize this may be an issue after maybe watching our show. What do you do?
First thing is to sort of observe your child over time and see, where do the behaviors typically come up. Is it that they're constantly complaining of their socks? Are they constantly, like the seams in their socks? Or is it that they constantly, or their diet is starting to suffer because they really don't like a lot of different textures?
Okay.
Where are the behaviors or the things that you're seeing coming up?
All right, now do you go to
So
a pediatrician?
Then you would go to your pediatrician
Okay.
and see, but some pediatricians are not as open to hearing about the disorder. Another avenue may be, and again, depending on your state, another avenue may be to go to your school system if your child is already in a school, 5 and beyond. 3 and beyond, because 0 to 3 is early intervention, so that would be a different avenue.
Okay.
3 beyond, typically they're in a school system. Your child could go, you could talk to your occupational therapist in your school system if they have one, talk to the teacher. If there isn't that avenue open, then you want to go to a clinic. Either a pediatric clinic, and especially you need one that has an occupational therapist that is certified or at least has some knowledge of sensory integration.
Okay.
Because what then they will do is they'll typically give parents a questionnaire so that you can identify which behaviors you're seeing and how much they truly impact what's happening in your child's life. If they're seeing some clusters of things or behaviors, then what they'll do is actually do a formal evaluation, which does take a while to do. It's called the Sensory Integration Praxis Test. And the therapist does have to be certified to do that test. So they will actually get a license that says that they can do that test. And then in conjunction with observations that they make and this questionnaire that parents fill out, and because this test is standardized, so it does have norms,
Okay.
they'll pull all that information together and then decide whether the child truly has a sensory processing disorder.
It just seems that everything you said, could be very common, but different, grades of it, and it's
Mhm.
something that, I think that is very interesting because a lot of parents may not have heard of this, but again, I keep finding people that have children with this, and
Mhm.
it's not the end of the world by any means, but certainly something that parents should
But
be aware of.
it could really impact a child's
Yeah.
life.
And their development, of course, so
Mhm.
we want to know what it is. So I want to thank you for joining us tonight. This is a topic of great interest to me personally, and hopefully our viewers. You have some quick resources that maybe parents can find some more information if they want.
One of the books that's been out for a really long time is called The Out of Sync Child,
Mhm.
and that is actually a book. Another website that I found is called sensoryprocessingdisorder.com. So those would be 2 different
Perfect.
Places to find information.
That's great. And again, thanks for joining us tonight.
Mhm.
I'm going to close the show by, again, thanking our viewers for joining us. Please be sure to visit our website at www.mom-matters.com. Information on our past shows as well as future shows you'll find there. And again, this is Alyssa Dver for Mom Matters, giving you practical tips for more productive parenting.